Welcome to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS FM 98.1 AM 1220 and hometownstation.com. I am your host today, Tracy DeForge, and I've got my fabulous engineer with me today, Jen, because Peter is out probably doing something fun, and probably we don't even want to know what it is.
Oh,
right?
No. I was going to say he was wreaking havoc on someone. You're being too nice, I think.
Yes, that's the Southern Belle in me, but he definitely balances me out in that regard, that's for sure. But we miss him, and we wish he was here today. But I am excited about our guest because we have as we always do, we have an amazing guest. And if you've listened to the show before, you know that it is the Ask Brien radio show, and that means that it is spelled Brien. And we celebrate the E's around here, but we always start our celebration. Well, today we get to start our celebration with the E for estrogen, which we don't always get to do. So Jen and I will celebrate that for the first part of the show anyway, and also you as our engineer, because without you, Jen, it just wouldn't even be the same around here. It just wouldn't.
Well, we need that balance, and I'm happy to help.
And the other E's that we celebrate on the Ask Brien radio show are also all about entrepreneurship, and we interview experts on this show that are just mind-blowing sometimes. They're so exciting, and we get to, I personally love to do the show because I get to learn every time we interview an expert. And we also just have a lot of energy. We have a lot of enthusiasm, and we just have a lot of fun. And fun does not start with an E, but we have fun around here, right?
That's true. The enthusiasm. I'm not going to let anybody scream, so we'll just do this instead for enthusiasm.
Oh, okay. Yes, that just feels so much easier on the eardrum. Okay. Well, enough of us extrapolating E's out of Ask Brien and putting them into context.
That was a good one.
Let's bring on our amazing guest. Jose, are you still there with us?
I am here. How are you, Tracy?
Well, I am great, and I just couldn't be more thrilled to introduce you to our audience because your experience as an entrepreneur, as an author, and as a land developer, and the expertise that you have in all of these areas, including land acquisition, business growth strategies. Like, we have so many pathways of conversation open to us today. Author, amazing media experience. So please tell us just a little bit more about yourself in all of those areas, and let us meet you and let our audience get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Tracy, thank you for having me on your show. It's great to be here. Well, what can I begin with in this famous world of entrepreneurship, which has been a very long journey for me? I started very young. I started my first company when I was 17 years old. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to really start with this stage of my life, with this stage of my career. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur for a number of reasons. I always thought that it was not only a little bit scary, which is a contradiction. Most people are scared of entrepreneurship and going on their own and starting a business. I think I had a little bit more of a concern in allowing others, another company, a boss, an entity, design or determine what my future would be and what I would become. So, I started early. I think I got lucky enough to understand that the sooner you start, the better, the easier, the less responsibilities, the less overhead, the less obligations you have, the more time, the more energy. And although it's never too late to embark on this journey and become a business owner, but it doesn't hurt to start sooner rather than later. I've been a serial entrepreneur ever since then for 35 or so years.
I love that. So do you remember that moment where you were, and maybe also if you can bring us up to speed a little bit on your history prior to being an entrepreneur, but like, what was that moment that you were just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this. Like, I believe in myself to do this thing. Like, was there a specific catalyst or moment for you that was your aha?
Yes, but it wasn't when I started. It was way earlier than that. I would see my father as although he had a very different activity, different style of doing things, more than an entrepreneur, he was a salesman. He got up early, dressed up, carried his suitcase, always ready to go, so energetic, doing deals, closing transactions. And since I grew up with that image, I just couldn't wait for me to go out and start figuring things out on my own and learning about different industries. So it wasn't one single moment. I think there was a moment in which I decided to start, but it was already in my mind. It was already part of my plan and part of the strategy that I wanted to follow. One of the issues I had is that I wasn't quite certain in what industry or what product or how to go about it. I wasn't blessed with that gift that a lot of people have, which is to clearly know and understand exactly what path or what industry, something that they know and understand. I didn't have that. All I knew is that I wanted to be in the business world, and that allowed me some good opportunities because I wasn't very picky. I wasn't waiting for the perfect scenario in the perfect situation. I just wanted to get things going, and the first opportunity I had, I jumped on it. Funny, interesting that you mentioned me being a developer builder, having been in the construction business for so long, but that is not where I started, and I've done so many other things that all revolve around starting businesses, startups. From technology to manufacturing to distribution, you name it, I've been in them at some point, one way or the other, as an investor, as a partner, as an operator, and they're all uniquely interesting. It's amazing. Obviously, there's always the uncertain factor. There's always the pressure, the stress that many people misunderstand about this activity. You know, we think that we do it because we're going to immediately own our time, have freedom, make a bunch of money, do what we want when we want, and it's quite different. It is more of a life choice, but not necessarily immediate freedom. It takes years before you can build something and actually have the right, let's call it, to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. You know, before you actually can own some of your time. It's going to get harder before it gets easier, and there's a lot of sacrificing in the process. So it's something that we should all know when we get into this type of lifestyle.
You know, we've been doing this show now for over 7 years, and I honestly want to say that you're the first person who has so succinctly talked about the fact that a lot of times people go into entrepreneurship because they say they want the freedom and flexibility that it will bring to them without the awareness and the insights that you're basically, instead of working for a company, you're transitioning into a role of essentially you're working for your clients. And that can sometimes mean that you're investing way more time and have way less flexibility because you, especially as you're building and growing, you are reliant upon being your own business development resource, being your own tech support, being your own marketing agency, being your own website designer. And while doing all of that, being very focused on customer service so that you can maintain and retain that business. So I'm really feel really powerful about this conversation because I don't think it happens and really is talked about enough.
Yeah. We really underestimate the difficulties of this career. You are so right. Sometimes we fantasize and glorify this industry or this career of entrepreneurship, seeing it as a ticket to freedom and wealth and power and all of those fun things. But the reality is that you're so right. You no longer have one boss. Now you have many bosses, your clients, your bankers, people who trust you, financiers, your vendors, your employees. You have to be there for everyone. You have to have time for everyone. And little by little learn with your own mistakes by understanding the sequence of events and the number of setbacks that will come your way. Something else that we're rarely aware of is that when you start a business, build a business, get into anything that has been started from scratch, it's never going to go your way. It's never going to happen the way you plan it or envision it or intend it to happen. So you have to be open-minded and be able to pivot and adjust, make quick decisions, and know that plans are wonderful, business plans and having a strategy and having a system, but you also have to be able to change and adjust according to the circumstances of what your business is teaching you and showing you as you go. It never goes the way you plan, and that's just part of it. If you go in thinking that everything is going to be smooth and easy and wonderful and successful, you're setting yourself up to fail because it's not going to be that way. It's going to be tough and difficult and competitive. There might even be, in most cases, more bad days than good. Before things start to come together, you're going to have to go through a lot of sacrificing, walking away from fun and entertainment and free time. And so, yes, if you are serious about this and you want to truly make something out of your business, it's going to take really, really wanting to succeed and having no alternative and nothing better to do than to pay attention to your baby. So,
yes, and I think that's such an interesting way to say that too, taking care of your baby, because we're absolutely have to be at our core resilient and be able to pivot and make changes when necessary, when the industry shifts and changes under our feet. And right now that's happening so rapidly in so many different business sectors. But I think entrepreneurs have another challenge that you've brought up that, again, I don't feel like it's talked about enough, which is this emotional attachment that we have to our businesses, because essentially we've concepted them, we've created them, we've built them. It's a labor of love to be able to stay connected to a business for the length of time it takes to grow and scale it. But at some point, we also have to have the detachment with love as an entrepreneur for our business for it to go to the next level. And could you share a little bit, especially if you're bringing in outside investors, if you're bringing in a board, if you're bringing in a CEO to run it, like as you start to take it from a solopreneur or a small team to a bigger staff, a bigger multiple locations, or bringing in investors, that love for your business as a baby that you kind of brought up and raised, you have to adjust the emotions around that. Have you had that experience?
Oh, many, many times. And it's not a single event. It's an ongoing process of letting go little by little. It starts even from the early stages. For example, delegating is a way of handing over control to some areas of your business, and it has to be done carefully and it has to be done very smartly, understanding what it is that you can hand over to other people in your organization, understanding what are the qualifications of the people that you are allowing to enter your world and the world of your business. But even in the early stages, understanding at what point do you need to start bringing in people to help you. Most of us in this world, we are scared to pass on some of this control, let's call it, because it's been so hard to get here, so difficult to have achieved at least the basics and to get going, where you are scared, you're petrified sometimes of allowing someone to mess it up for you. So what I always recommend is, try, or at least what has worked for me. I can't say that I perfected or mastered the art of delegating. I'm still trying to keep my eyes on too many things, and that's just part of a lot of the entrepreneur's nature, to just try to be everywhere and have eyes and ears everywhere. But I begin by trying to delegate things that are repetitive, that do not require so much thinking, creativity, decision-making, envisioning the future events. Some of those repetitive tasks that you feel that someone could do even better than you, and start understanding also what are some of your weaknesses within the business, so that you can start handing those over to someone else little by little. And then, like you mentioned, it starts getting more into the financial, where you start requiring outside capital, whether it's investors, partners, bankers. And little by little, as you grow, you're going to try to continue your vision in showing the people around you that you are the leader that everyone needs to trust and understand. But eventually, less and less of that authority is going to be strictly in your hands, and it's going to be passed on as you grow. And that's the part of the health of a growing organization. It's not all about you. It becomes the accumulated effects of many people's efforts and actions, no longer just what you as an individual does, but what everybody else is doing on your behalf as a team.
Yes, and I think, again, it's just, you sharing these real-world experiences really help ground it to people who are having this, starting out on this journey. And I love the way you're just so raw and open about the challenges and how to really navigate some of those. And in your book, The Business of Home Building, you talk about setting up a company with clear operating procedures as a plan for success. Do you think that, like, some of the things that you were just sharing about are part of setting up those clear operating procedures?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, those rules and observations and comments that I make throughout the book apply to just about any other business. I wanted my first book to be dedicated and devoted more towards the industry where I've spent most of my career, or a good portion of my career. But the fundamentals of starting and building a business are very similar in most industries. Numbers are numbers. People and managing all operates in a similar way, no matter what the product or the service is. And in this book, I somewhat lay out things that may be somewhat obvious to a lot of people, the steps, the sequence of events that need to occur for you to put a business together, elevate it, build it, and be successful. And some of them, as easy and fundamental as they may be, we may forget to think about them. We may neglect to focus or spend enough time drafting a plan, drawing your process, the way that you're going to go about in executing these ideas. Entrepreneurs are gut feeling type of personalities that just act and move forward and do things as they go, solve problems as they go, and that's fine. But when you combine that with a great plan and with understanding exactly what it is that you want, where it is that you want to get to, and how do you intend to get there, and start creating a system and a plan, you have much better probabilities of getting there, of reaching your goals and becoming successful.
Well, we are going to come back after the break and talk more in detail about that. You are listening to KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, and HometownStation.com. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, and HometownStation.com, the Ask Brien radio show. And our guest today is Jose Berlanga, and he is just dropping all of the great entrepreneur bombs of information, all the great nuggets today. Jose, loving having you on the show today. And we've talked about some really good philosophical elements and challenges around entrepreneurship. But there's something that I feel like intuitively that you've got a really good handle on that a lot of entrepreneurs don't. And that's all around the facet of building out and managing essential budgets and looking at, because of all of the project management that goes into the massive construction projects and land development and things like that. How can an entrepreneur take some of those skill sets and apply it to any business? And what are some of the critical things that are important when you're creating and managing the budgets for projects?
Great question. Very interesting, because I've seen this over the years, over and over, where many entrepreneurs are more on the technical, on the art end of things. Even as doctors or attorneys, professionals, architects, start their own firms, and are very good at what they do. They understand their activity and they're amazing at it, but they neglect to understand the fact that business is a little bit different than understanding a specific task or a specific craft. So they tend to forget a little bit about understanding the fundamentals of putting numbers together. For example, what it is that it's going to cost me to operate my business, what it's going to really mean for me to go on my own. What is my break-even point? What is my time worth? What are my personal expenses? How much do I need to invoice every month in order for me to at least pay the bills of the company and my personal ones? Start understanding those fundamentals of fixed expenses versus variable, your cost of goods sold, understanding your break-even point. They are basic, but once again, many of us forget to sit down and draw a plan and start describing and breaking down those numbers one by one, creating categories of expenses. And another one is we tend to want to do it after the fact, especially when we're new in business, when we're new entrepreneurs. We tend to put it off, procrastinate on the bookkeeping, administrative, record keeping, planning, budgeting, understanding what we're spending. Where are we spending the dollars? Where are the dollars going? There are so many businesses that are making money and they don't know where the money is going. They're not keeping good track of what's coming in, what's going out. Why am I spending too much and on what? There are businesses that are not making money, but they're cash flowing. So we have to understand those fundamental differences between cash flow and profitability. So if we are not aware of the fact that in order for you to be successful, you have to pay attention to the business side of things and not just the technical side of things, it is a bad formula. It's a risky and dangerous formula for you to follow. And the fact is that even though many of us entrepreneurs know it, we ignore it. We just put it aside and for a later date because we think that understanding our industry might be enough to become successful. And that's a mistake. So without getting into details of, obviously, every single business and every single industry has their own formats, their own cost structures in numbers and percentages and ratios and all of that you need to understand. Thank God now with the social media, with the internet, with Google, there's so much access to information. We just have to look for it and know that it needs to be an integral part, a very, very important part of putting your business together.
Yes, yes, and yes to all of that. I'm curious if you have some insights that you could share on maybe a basic way for people to get started on that, highlighting specifically your point about a lot of people doing it later in the game versus initially. So do you have any basic structures or basic tips that someone could, who might be looking at, like, when this show is live today, obviously, and if someone's listening to the podcast version, it's in October of 2024. So a lot of people are already starting to think about 2025. What are some basic principles that you could share that have been helpful for you to avoid some of the pitfalls of budgeting and managing these essential expense and bottom line numbers?
Well, I'm going to start with a very basic ones, which before we even get to the actual breakdown of some numbers. One of the rules that I follow, and I never break it, I treat each one of my entities as if it was its own separate human being, let's call it. I treat it as a separate entity from everything else, from myself, from my other businesses. I don't commingle. I don't mix one with the other. So the first step when you are going to start a business is you need to create your entity, whatever it is you're going to go with. You need to consult with your team, whether you're going to go into a corporation or an LLC, so on and so forth. Once you select that, you need to get some, even if it's the most basic software, QuickBooks. I don't care what it is, but I never spend a single dollar on a new entity until I have a software. I have an account that has been established. I have the person that is going to run the input, the numbers, even if it's yourself. So I do not begin my operation until I structure those very basic ones, because before you know it, a bunch of money has gone in and out of your account and you start losing track. So understand that needs to come in before you start operating. And many of us do it after, okay? We start selling, marketing, promoting, invoicing, and then later we start looking for who is going to do my bookkeeping, and let me look for all my receipts and all my payments and all my deposits. And trying to reconstruct all of that becomes a nightmare in any given entity. And then, of course, you start going into the following steps, which is how much is it going to cost me?
Let's suspensefully hold that thought until, because we're going to take a break, because speaking of finances, we need to give our sponsor a little love so that we can continue this conversation. So let's take a break for our sponsor, and we'll get right back into it. You're listening to KHTS 98.1 AM, 1220 and HometownsStation.com.
And the Ask Brien show wants to say thank you to our sponsor, LegalSteps.com. That's spelled LegalStepz. That's with a Z.com. And I'm listening to what Jose is talking about, kind of like doing a recon of before you really get into starting your own business. And it seems like such an obvious thing to do. And I think people kind of get ahead of themselves, and that's kind of what you guys are talking about. And so thinking about legal steps, it's kind of nice to have things laid out for you to where it's not really a challenge. It's not a question. It's very simple, and you can do it on your own. And certainly, you look at some of the legalese, if you will, and it can be kind of confusing, the terms that are used, the words, the phrases, and you want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. So the experts at LegalSteps.com are here for you. These experts, by the way, have over 30 years of experience. So you're not dealing with somebody who's brand new and maybe kind of, looking things up along with you. You've got somebody who knows this backwards and forwards. And if you get to the point in the middle of a course where you're frustrated, you throw your hands up, I don't know what I'm doing, this is super confusing, they'll just do it for you. So you're really in great hands. The courses are under $150 each. So don't let something, and I know funds are tight right now, don't let something like money, especially a small amount of money, relatively speaking, get in the way of what you've always wanted to do, which is start your own business. You can register a trademark. You can take a course on how to form an S corporation or how to form an LLC. All of the courses are reviewed by the attorneys that I mentioned, and they're really kind of made just for your busy life. It took me less than 2 hours to take one of the courses. I was able to pause, rewind, work at my own pace, which is huge for everyone. You're all busy. We all have spouses, children, other jobs, home, and you don't have time to work on somebody else's schedule. So you can work in your own schedule, screen in screen as you're on the course, so you can see what the legal expert is looking at, and you know that you're in the right spot. Check out legalsteps.com, legalstepz.com.
I love that. And it is so important to have all these entities set up separately. That piece of advice, so smart. And going ahead and setting up the financials, I think, in my own personal experience, for me, I'm so grateful in retrospect that I financially separated everything personal and everything business from the very start for all of the businesses that I've activated, because watching other people commingle personal funds and business funds, it just not only is it a false sense of accuracy around your P&Ls and profit and loss statements and things like that, but if you were ever to go to sell your business, what a mess that is to have to separate all of that. So if you just start out with books that are clean from the beginning, then you don't have to go back and retroactively piece things together or separate things out. So again, just, another great tip for entrepreneurs. So digging into those essential steps when you were talking about budgeting and mapping out some essential expenses and budget plans, what are some of those specific steps that you could share with us?
Well, of course, something important that one more area that could be forgotten is the value of time. And we forget that perhaps we need to sell X number of units, which is called a projection for all the new entrepreneurs that need to forecast what it is that they need to produce and sell or invoice in order for them to cover their overhead and their expenses, both personal and business. I'll give you an example, and we'll use the construction example, since this is what this book is about. When I started building homes, let's say that it took me the whole entire year to build one home, and we made X number of dollars. When we look back at the cost of my personal expenses plus the other couple of people that were involved in the project, we ended up spending more money on our living expenses than the profit we made on the actual house. This is a good example. So as a matter of fact, although we made money on the house, we lost money in the company and time-wise. So it taught me, in order for me to even just to break even, I need to produce 2 of these per year, and I need to maintain each one of these expenses at whatever level. So I see information and financial information mostly as the instrumentation that it's required, let's say, for a pilot, and this is one of the analogies I use in the book. A pilot cannot operate without instrumentation. An entrepreneur cannot operate without numbers, without reporting, without information, accurate and timely information.
Yes. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you think people face in getting to getting either to that place or overcoming that level of challenge?
Well, sometimes we may get a little bit distracted with the actual cost of things. We may get a little confident. This is something that many entrepreneurs have, excessive confidence in their ability to perform. I'm going to sell more units. I'm going to negotiate better. I'm going to build something for a lower cost. We're not cautious. We don't build a cushion. We don't have cash reserves. We don't have line items for contingencies and things like that. And business rarely ever goes perfect or as planned or as budgeted. So you need to understand the standard basic cost structure of whatever product you're building or service that you're rendering, because they all have their own characteristics and their own parameters, let's call it. And sometimes we underestimate those, or we just neglect to spend a little bit of time understanding what it is that a unit should cost me and how many I need to sell, so on and so forth. So really understanding and paying a little bit of attention, and most of all, investing the time. It's not rocket science. It's just neglected and ignored in many cases.
We are going to take a break and just, again, continue this amazing conversation. You're listening to KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, and hometownstation.com. Welcome back. You're listening to KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, and hometownstation.com. Jose, I want more time with you. This wasn't enough time, and I feel like if I feel this way, our audience absolutely feels this way. So, if someone was wanting to wanted to reach out, connect with you, learn more about you and your businesses, get your book, what is the best way for them to be able to do that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I'm one of those rare individuals nowadays that does very little social media. I've been so busy with my work, with my business, that I've neglected that area a little bit. And as things are changing, I'm beginning to participate more in this world of social media, which is amazing. My website is joseberlanga.com. And of course, I have a YouTube account where I do a lot of interviews and podcasts as a guest, and there are very interesting interviews that I've been a part of. But that's pretty much it. My company, Onyx Land Partners, and a few other websites. But joseberlanga.com. My book is on Amazon. It's available to the public now.
Oh, I love that. Well, and if you would like to re-listen to this live show, because it's so full of just really great information and inspirational tactics and tips, you can listen to it again on the Ask Brien podcast. And of course, that's Brien. So if you are searching on your favorite listening platform, it's the Ask Brien podcast. And we will also have links to Jose's website and the book on Amazon and all of the things in the show notes for the podcast. So make sure to check those out there. And I'm known you may not know this about me, Jose, but I'm known to pivot content during the show every now and then. And I would like this opportunity, as we have this time together, to pivot into something that I can tell just by looking at your website that family life is very important to you. And we spent a lot of time today talking about making sure that you have time to make sure you spend time on your budgeting and your planning and the running of your business and the operations of your business. But I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about how important it is to also make your family a priority as you are doing all of this work. Can you share a little bit about that piece of your world?
Sure. And nowadays, we all try to find what our passion is, the why in what we do, the reason for us to search for these achievements and fight for these goals. That has been my family, of course. I have a little bit of a different story than the traditional one, which is that I divided sections of my life. I think it happened by luck, and in retrospect, it worked out because the first couple of decades in my career as an entrepreneur, I was single, and I was able to focus so much on it that by the time I was married and had kids, I now had the ability to own my time and be able to spend as much time and turn them into my priority. Had I started a business with a family and kids, it would have been possible, but it would have been harder. And when that is your case, you just have to be a very well administered time manager. You have to manage your time every day, all day, block times for the different things. Never forget that, money comes and goes, but, your family, eventually your children go and grow and go away, and and you have to figure out how to make time for them and manage all those stresses and you have to become a very, very organized individual. It's easier said than done, but you have to figure it out. Not spend. One of the recommendations I give is be very frugal with every action and every reaction throughout your day in your business. Don't spend 30 minutes or an hour on something that you can do in 5 minutes. Be quick with your decision making, with your appointments, with your meetings. Don't waste time.
Wow, I love that advice too. I mean, if you ever listen back to any of the previous episodes, I guarantee you're not going to hear me say, I love that. I love that. That was a good one, as many times as I have said that in today's show. And for that, I truly, really appreciate all of the gems that you have shared with us today. And I encourage anyone who is listening to the radio show live or the podcast, please go and visit joseberlanga.com. Check out the link in the show notes if you want to confirm how to get there, or just go straight there. But just get there and get that book, because that's the thing. That's what I'm doing next after this show is I'm going to order your book. But
that's great. Thank you so much.
Well, you're incredibly welcome, and thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and insights. And I'm kind of sad, Jen, that Peter wasn't here for this one, because it was just incredibly dynamic, and that's all because of you, Jose. Thank you so much for a wonderful episode of Ask Brien. And you've been listening to KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, and HometownStation.com.